Questions around retirement are endless and weigh on all of us. In this week-long series, Yahoo Finance spoke to experts across the industry to help navigate your retirement roadmap. We explored topics like how to pick the best retirement plan, how to build your retirement portfolio, and even the best states to retire in. Take a listen.
Retirement might seem light years away for some, but when it comes to getting started with your retirement planning, are you on the right track? A new study from Northwestern Mutual showed Americans expect they should save nearly $1.3 million for retirement. But the average U.S. adult only has 7% of that target amount in the bank. So what can you do ahead to plan? Carrie Carbonaro, Advisors Capital Management Senior Vice President, and Mark Miller, author of Retirement Reboot, Common Sense Financial Strategies for Getting Back on Track. They join me now. Carrie, let me just throw this to you. We've had an incredible year in the markets, but admittedly, it's left a lot of people behind, just kind of demonstrating why you need to be in the market.
Yeah.
How should younger people be thinking about their retirement needs right now?
So young people necessarily don't always think about their retirement because they always have other priorities that they put ahead of retirement. But I always say you can't borrow for retirement. So you have to start and you have to own your own financial future. So all the young people, I need them to get on budgets and then find the money in their budgets to contribute to their 401ks or IRAs or any type of workplace retirement plans, because if they start now, it is amazing how compounding interest will grow for them over time, and they are going to meet that retirement goal of $1.3 million, at least as it is today, if you've got 30, 40 years to save.
And Mark, similar question to you, and I'm noting as you're writing to us, at least half of us are on track for an unsuccessful retirement. How do we fix that?
Well, yeah, and that just defining that simply is the ability to maintain your standard of living in retirement. You know, with respect to younger generations, a couple of key concerns that I have are that, fewer young people are going to receive traditional defined benefit pensions than previous generations, which are incredibly important sources of retirement security. And also, younger people are going to receive less in Social Security benefits when we look at that in terms of the amount of pre-retirement income that Social Security replaces will be lower for everybody born after 1960 because of the higher retirement ages put in place. So, I agree that the good news is that, time is on your side when you're young. I agree with Carrie's point there in terms of compounding, but I would just add this. I actually think, even though I write about retirement for a living, I think sometimes there are other things that you should be doing first. I don't think you should be carrying high cost debt, for example. If there's an available dollars to use, I would use it to reduce high cost debt rather than going into a 401k. But that said, so I think cleaning up your household budget is critical, and getting even small contributions. I often tell young people, put away what you can, even if it's a small amount, because it will compound and redound to your benefit over time.
Carrie, we've seen dynamics of the pandemic play out over the last few years. We've seen retirement kind of get redefined in a few different ways. We have the rise of the gig economy, so older people now have more options for doing part-time work. What are some of the trends you've noticed change with respect to retirement and retirement thinking over the last few years?
So there's a lot of retirement rewirement I've heard that term a lot.
I like that.
Where people are deciding what is retirement. Am I going to retire? Am I going to just slow down and get a part-time job? There's also the three different phases of retirement. I don't know if you've heard of them. The go-go, the slow-go, and the no-go. And so that actually affects how much you need to save, and that you're going to be spending a lot in the beginning. Medium amount in the middle, and then, not as much in the end when you just can't move as much anymore. But what's also interesting with the new gig economy and everything is something that we never had before is the social media success porn, which a lot of people are looking at, young people and people pretending to be rich and having these amazing lifestyles. And it's all really not real. The TikTok and Instagrams of the world are showing all this, and people are actually believing it. And I always say, there's no get rich quick, only get rich slow. So be careful where you get your advice from.
Yeah, so social media might be misleading. I can take that. I'll believe in that. Mark, I want to take it back to you. We've been talking about some of the younger generations here. What if you find yourself maybe in the middle stages of one's life and you haven't just saved enough? How do you catch up? What are some of the strategies that somebody who's a little bit older but hasn't saved enough can use to get on track?
Yeah, that's really the core focus of my book. And what I'm trying to explain in there is that even for people who are getting a late start, there are definitely steps you can take. So one of the most important ones, I think, is to understand the critical importance of the timing of retirement, which I think Carrie was just mentioning. Working even a few more years than you had planned can be an incredibly important lever, both because it allows you to delay your Social Security filing and hence claim higher benefits from the delayed retirement credit. It might allow you to do more catch-up saving late in the game. And net, it means fewer years that you're going to be financing through your savings because you're pushing out that retirement date. So I illustrate that through some hypotheticals, in the book. And I think, there are definitely things that people can do. I have a chapter in there on home equity. And, for most households, even those that haven't saved in retirement accounts, the majority of older households do own a home. And so, the home equity turns out to be the largest source of savings for lots of Americans. So it would be silly not to at least consider tapping that one way or the other, whether that's downsizing and moving or other means. So there's just some of the things that I explore in there. I think it's important to be really careful and thoughtful about your Social Security claim. And it's really important to understand healthcare, the cost of healthcare and retirement, and the importance of making smart decisions about Medicare.
And Carrie, your thoughts about the timing of retirement and how that fits into planning for it?
Sure. So yeah, it obviously it depends on what you're planning, when you're planning, where you're going to live, how much you're going to spend. There's so many factors, your longevity of your life. There's so many things that go into this. And I always say there's no one size fits all when it comes to financial planning. So I believe, getting with an expert, if it's really serious for you, to go in and make sure that you're maximizing everything that you're doing on your savings, make sure that you're making the right decisions, like Mark said, about Social Security. When are you going to take it? Do you have a pension? Obviously, most people do not at this point. So that makes a big difference of why retirement planning is so important today versus what it was 25 years ago when we had pensions and when the onus shifted from pensions to 401ks, which now the onus is on us. Also, I believe that it's really important, where are you going to live? Are you going to, yes, you're going to tap maybe your equity in your home, but are you going to downsize? And what states are you going to live in? Because obviously some states are more budget friendly when it comes to retirement. Mm-hmm. And that could really make a difference with, can you retire successfully or not? Could be even where you live.
Yeah, important.
Yeah, the importance of, could I just
go
add something
jump in.
there?
We got time for one more. You got the last word.
Thank you. Regarding getting advice and planning help, I think it's really critical for people getting closer to retirement. I think when you're young, the big goal is just save as much as you can, clean up your household budget. But things get more complicated as you get close to retirement and in retirement. So, I include a chapter in the book about how to hire a planner. I think you want to look for a fiduciary planner who can help you, who's, obligated to put your interests first. And that's, planning help can be great, but you have to find the right type of help.
All right. Really appreciate
Mark, that's me.
Really appreciate both of your insights here. Thank you for stopping by, Carrie Carbonaro and Mark Miller.
As an uncertain economic environment leads to elevated layoffs in several industries, many Americans are wondering what this means for their employer-sponsored retirement savings plans. Yahoo Finance senior columnist Carrie Hannon joins us now to explain your options. Carrie.
Well, hello. There are some options. It is, you basically have four options, right? And the first one, let's not do this one, cash out. And that 1 out of 3 workers cashes out. It opens the door to this invitation to take your money out of your retirement plan. This has huge repercussions. You pay tax on it. You pay a penalty.
1 out of 3 people do that.
Yeah,
wow.
And younger people more. And trust me, I did that when I was 30. And it's the biggest financial mistake I ever made when I think of what that would mean today. So that's number one thing. Try not to do that. The other 3 are much more preferable. Number 1, you can leave it right where it is in your current employer plan. So you don't have to make any rash moves. But this is something that if you like the retirement, the options, your investment options there, you can do that. Problem here is you can't add more to it. So it's there. The second one is you transfer it over to your new employer plan. You need to talk to that plan administrator and see if you can do this. That's a nice direct transfer. If you like the options there, good opportunity. It consolidates your retirement accounts so they're all in one place, hopefully. That's one option. The third option, which I think most people do at this point, is you do a direct transfer to an individual retirement account at a financial institution, an IRA. So what happens there is they help you. That the company will help, the financial institution will help set that up for you. You do a direct transfer, you have your own IRA, it gives you a lot more investment options, and you have control of it. So those are the basic ways to do it. There are a few caveats. If you are going in, you may end up paying higher fees with an individual IRA than you would if you kept it in an employer plan. That's simply because they can negotiate lower fees as a big institution. The second thing is if you're not quite vested in your employer plan, which means their contribution isn't the full amount that you expect, you may not get all of that vesting transferred, or you may get none if you haven't met that vesting thing. Something to remember. If you have a Roth 401k, you need to transfer that directly to a Roth IRA, whether you already have one up and running or if you need to open a new one, but it's got to go into a Roth. And finally, just keep in mind if you have a small account, if you're under, it's going to be $7,000 next year, but $5,000 for this year. Your employer, if you do nothing, your former employer might just put it in an IRA in your name, and it's really easy to lose track of that. So you don't necessarily want that to happen. If it's under $1,000, they may just cut you a check. If they cut you a check, you don't want that. They're taking the taxes out and you're paying the penalty. So those are the basic sort of the lay of the land.
Really, really helpful information. And not, by the way, just if you get laid off, also if you switch jobs. These are various things to consider.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Carrie Hannon. Really appreciate it. A new study from BlackRock found that only 56% of Americans say they feel on track for retirement. That's an 11% decline from 2022. For more on this report, we're joined for an exclusive interview with Ann Ackerley, the head of BlackRock's retirement group. And obviously, BlackRock is a huge player in retirement with a huge reach. Ann, it's great to see you again. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me, and so glad to be here to talk about retirement.
That number is alarming, right? Only 56% of people think that they're on track. What do you think is behind that unease, and especially the big change year over year?
Right, so we've been doing this survey, Read on Retirement, for 8 years, and this is the lowest it's ever been. As you said, only 56% of people, American workers, think they're on track for having the retirement they want to have. And in particular, we saw this enormous drop in Gen Z. So what's driving this? Well, it's really the market environment, right? There's been market volatility, inflation. People are concerned now about running out of money. I think anybody who lived through last year with both stocks and bonds being down, it was just a really hard year. And I think people are reflecting that in terms of their confidence in retirement.
How can one get back on track? What steps do they need to take?
So great question. One thing, and there was some good news in the survey that we did, workers did not reduce their contributions. So one of the most important things during this market volatility, these hard times, is to keep contributing. And we actually saw that people did that. Instead, they maybe didn't go on vacation, they maybe didn't buy a large item, so they reduced their spending so they could continue to contribute. One thing I would want to call out, so that was really good. Two things I would say is, one thing I did think was disturbing, when you looked at Gen Z, again, our youngest workers, 60% said they might consider selling during a market downturn. Only 20% of baby boomers said that. I would say to those Gen Zers, don't sell. You got to ride through this. You know, they just haven't lived through as many market cycles as maybe some more experienced older workers. So please, please, please don't sell. Ride through it. Continue to contribute. Continue to dollar cost average. When we turn to baby boomers, 36% of them said they were considering delaying retirement. So you ask, how do people get on track? You know, in an ideal world, people would retire at the age they want to. But given this market volatility, it may not be the worst thing to think a little bit about delaying retirement, if they can, not everybody can, continuing to earn some money and not spend. And maybe if you delay retirement, you can even put off taking Social Security, and that will ultimately increase your Social Security payment as well. So there are things people can do to be back on track, but we need to realize this is a tough time for people with respect to retirement savings.
I mean, it's so interesting too, because the last 2 years have illustrated to people the value of hanging on, right? Because last year was down, but this year a lot of that stuff has come back.
Yeah.
One of the other interesting things that stood out to me in the report was the bit about guaranteed income solutions, which sort of harkens back to the pension days, right? To guaranteed pension days. So are there more options now that sort of mimic that effect, that you know the money is going to be there, at least some portion of it?
So what I would say is savers, workers are asking for it. 90% of savers would like to see some form of guaranteed income in their 401k. And we know that employers are beginning to look at this.
So just to back up for 2 seconds, what does guaranteed income mean? What do people need to know about it?
Sure. I mean, in a sense, it's an annuity, right? Now, I know people don't like annuities. They think they're high-priced or they're complex. What is happening in the 401k space is there's been a lot of innovation, and pricing of annuities has come down. You can make them much simpler. And so the concept would be that within the 401k, you would have an option to choose for some part of your savings to buy an annuity. It might even be embedded in the target date. And so savers want it, workers want it. Employers are beginning to think about it, and we are starting to see some employers add a form of guaranteed savings into the 401k.
What are some of the biggest questions you've been getting from folks right now on retirement?
Sure. I mean, the number one thing, right, is how big does my nest egg need to be? You know, what does that nest egg, what will it earn in retirement, right? How much will I be able to spend? So that's a big range of questions. I'd also say just basics. People, and this is 71% of Gen Z, said they didn't know enough about investments to feel confident within their 401k. Now that's 50% of baby boomers, so maybe again with a little wisdom you learn a little more. But even the basics of what do I invest in, workers want advice and education, and they want it from their employers.
And are more employers offering that kind of advice?
Yes, 100%. 98% of the employers we surveyed said they feel responsible for their employees' financial well-being. And yes, we're starting to see more programs around financial wellness, more education, and I would just encourage employers in this kind of volatile time, you know, the down and the up and inflation, education, advice, offer it, you know, short videos on your internet. People are really looking to their employers for this kind of advice because they trust their employers.
Really interesting stuff and important stuff.
Important
obviously,
stuff.
for a lot of people. I love this report when we get it. It has really good insights. And I love seeing you. Thanks for coming in, and I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me.
Well, nearly 3 in 4 Americans say they don't feel financially secure at the moment. That's according to a recent Bankrate survey. 41% point to insufficient retirement funds as a factor that's keeping them from financial security. We want to help change that by getting you retirement ready. And here with a 5-part retirement checklist is Jean Chatzky, financial expert and Opportunity Knox financial coach. Jean, let's start with that list. What's on the top 5?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, nice to see you. Thanks for having me. First thing that you have to do is figure out what your retirement looks like. And I know that that sounds really obvious, but in particular, we know that there is often a disconnect between couples. When are you retiring? Where are you retiring? What will you do day to day in your retirement? Will you continue to earn some sort of an income, as many people do? You got to scope that out. And then you have to, part 2, step 2, figure out how much that's actually going to cost. putting numbers together with your plan. A lot of people are banking on old math. They're thinking, well, my retirement life is probably going to cost me about 80% of my pre-retirement life. That was true for some of our parents and some of our grandparents, but we're retiring younger in some cases. We're retiring healthier in a lot of cases. We've got more years to live. And so figuring out where that money that you are going to come up with is actually going to go, what it's going to fund, how much housing is going to cost, how much transportation is going to cost, how much travel you want to do, how much you're banking on for healthcare. That's an integral part of the equation. And a lot of people have no idea where their money is even going day to day. So that is a good place to start. Figure out where your money is going now. If you're feeling like you're at a loss with that, my coaching program, which is called Finance Fix, it's a program that we developed at hermoney.com, can help. It helps you get in touch with your money so that you can save a little more, spend a little less, and start to make progress towards your goals.
Jean, you'll have to forgive me for reading ahead on this assignment as well in this top 5 list. Number 3 talks about the sources of income. And I mean, I've always been taught you got to have 5 streams of income. I'm working on it to all the people that told me that growing up. But where within your retirement checklist do you advise people on where they can find different sources of retirement funds?
So these days, most of us don't have pensions with the exception of Social Security. I'll come to that in just a second. We do have retirement accounts, and we've been told accumulate money in these accounts. Well, now we're in a position when we look retirement in the face where we have to say, all right, how do I take this sum of money and make it last as long as I do? And there are additional strategies that you need to dig into that involve coordinating taxes so that you're pulling the money out of the right accounts at the right time. That you think about things like, do you want to craft a retirement paycheck using some of that money to perhaps buy you an annuity that will provide a stream of income that will last as long as you will last without having to worry about it? And when it comes to Social Security, people without a strategy for when they're going to take Social Security leave a lot of money on the table. In particular, for the higher earner in the family, you want to try to wait as long as possible between age 62 and age 70 before tapping Social Security, because for every additional year you wait, you get a bump in benefits equal to about 8%. That's a guaranteed return, and it's tough to beat on a year-to-year basis by putting your money into a diversified portfolio of investments.
Finally, looking at number 4 and 5 on your list, how do you think people should be thinking about long-term care? And ultimately, that last part, getting help. What do you advise people?
So when it comes to long-term care, this is particularly important for women. We're going to outlive the men in our lives. Many of us who are partnered will take care of the men in our lives. But then when it comes to our own care, we should be looking into a bundle of benefits that will pay for things like nursing home care or at-home health care, unless we've got enough money to pay for those things ourselves. It's a complicated product, comes in a lot of permutations, which is why getting help is number 5 on the list, and it's paramount. If you are more than 10 years or 10 years or so out from retirement, if you're around 50, 55, and you have yet to go through a pre-retirement checkup that puts you through all of these steps, that looks at whether or not you're well situated to embrace the retirement that you want, it's time to have that checkup. You want to have it with a financial advisor who is a fiduciary, who has your best interest at heart. And you want to make sure that you lay out a plan that you can follow for the next decade. It may change. That's okay. But having a plan is the only thing that will really get you going.
Certainly good advice there. A lot of people taking notes. Jean Chatzky, good to talk to you today. Really appreciate the time.
Thanks.
When digging into investment opportunities to build out your retirement portfolio, stocks seem to be the most obvious option, but our next guest says that there are several other opportunities that should be considered. Lawrence Sprung, who is the Midland Financial founder and author of Financial Planning Made Personal, joins us now. Great to have you here in studio with us.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so a lot of people largely kind of think about stocks and think about kind of the long time horizon that they may have, but you're saying look somewhere else. Where's the top place that you're advising people to look other than stocks?
So first and foremost, if you're investing long term, you should be looking at your retirement plan and making sure you're capturing at least your employer match. If you're getting a match from your employer, it's free money. Make sure you're contributing at least that much. And I agree with you, when you hear about investments, people's mindset go immediately to stocks. And it doesn't have to just be stocks. You want to build out a balanced portfolio.
And so to Brad's point, kind of what's the most attractive alternative?
So the whole idea is, and as I talk about in my book, Financial Planning Made Personal, it's really up to each individual to build out an asset allocation that is perfect or right for them. That's going to include stocks, that's going to include bonds, and within stocks, that may include several different types of stocks: large cap, mid cap, small cap. Bonds may include government bonds, international. You also want to look at commodities. That might be a good place for an inflation hedge, right? Or real estate are a good option. So it's not just about focusing on stock, it's building out a diversified portfolio within that retirement plan.
One of the things that we think about too is the different streams of income that one can set up in order to have their money perhaps generating even more income while they are retired. And so how can one adequately set themselves up for that as they are heading to or getting towards retirement?
So the most important thing is to have a plan well in advance of retirement and understand where these income streams are going to come from. Some of that may come from a pension, some of that may come from a retirement plan. Maybe you went out and bought some real estate. Maybe that's in your DNA to own and operate a piece of real estate that in retirement will be paid off and produce an income stream for you. Maybe it's a business. Maybe you have a small business that's not dependent upon you as an owner. Maybe you can manage it, have other people operate it, and receive an income stream from there too. It's a matter of what your risk appetite is, how much income you need to derive in retirement, and look at where that's coming from.
I'm also curious, when you talk about things like real estate or a business, it's sort of daunting in people's minds, right? To take on a home mortgage. Are there options that you recommend to people where they can buy a piece of something, for example?
Yeah, sure. That's a great point. You know, when it comes to real estate, there's many ways to enter it, and I was just giving you one example. If you're not somebody who wants to be that owner-operator, you could look at real estate investment trusts where you're going to own a piece of a portfolio and perhaps get an income stream. If you're even more savvy, there might be private opportunities where you could join other private investors, own a pool of assets, and get an income stream in retirement. There's really a flavor for everyone. It's just a matter of finding what's right for you in terms of what your goals are, your risk profile, and what your time horizon is.
I, like many millennials and Gen Zers out there, are monitoring immensely close the future financial status of the Social Security program as well here. And by some of the projections, I mean, we're looking at like 2035 as where they're looking to not be able to pay out the entirety of some of the benefits that were expected by many people in the workforce. So where should you be backfilling for the absence, or what generations should not expect to be able to lean on Social Security?
So there's a lot to unpack there, but I don't know if this will make you feel better or worse, but this has been a conversation since I started in this profession 20 plus years ago. I've been hearing about Social Security running out, et cetera. And there have been several iterations, changes that they've made to Social Security in terms of raising the income limit as far as you're paying in. The reality is the vast majority of folks who are retiring are really relying heavily on Social Security. So it's important to the fabric of the country to maintain that status of Social Security. So I don't think they're going to, get rid of it, but they are going to tweak it. So it's going to be very important for people in your stage, millennials, et cetera, to make sure that they're positioning themselves in a way to have other income streams. And it's a matter of finding what's right, setting up a dividend-paying stock portfolio, whether it be real estate, having a side gig, whatever that may be. It's something that they should start considering and, more importantly, planning for.
So as they consider that, I'm just curious finally about other alternatives, right? Whether it be crypto or wine, which people can invest in, or antique cars or gold coins or whatever, what have you. And I know you said everybody's different, but I think of that as sort of the other basket. How should people be thinking about that basket?
So that basket is very wide-ranging, and I think there's a difference between, for instance, investing, quote unquote, in crypto or investing in a wine collection, right? I don't think the average person has the ability necessarily to invest in a wine collection unless they're doing it in some kind of private placement and group platform. Crypto obviously is a little more accessible, and I think there's different risks involved, right? Crypto is something that they can, in most cases, easily convert to cash, assuming that crypto is still around and viable. Wine, that may be a little lower ability to convert that into cash or an income stream when that time comes. So I think you have to look at the liquidity factor of these various investments and what fits and what you think is going to be around and viable long term as well.
All right. Lawrence Sprung, who is the Midland Financial founder and author of Financial Planning Made Personal. Thanks so much for joining us here on set.
Thanks for having me.
The word retire may mean calling it quits for some. Others are not ready to throw in the towel just yet. A new survey from Transamerica Center for Retirement Studies showed that 55% of people plan to continue working after they retire, including me, by the way. Yahoo Finance's Carrie Hannon joins me with all the details. Carrie, any surprises here?
Well, Jared, I absolutely love this. I'm a big fan of working in retirement, right? Mm-hmm. There's really good reasons for this. There's so many benefits. First of all, even people who have saved appropriately for retirement are considering adding, just doing some kind of additional work, whether we're not taking pedal to the metal.
Sure.
This is part-time or flex time. And so what we're talking about is what they can do is it gives them a financial safety net in a sense, right? So it not only, yes, you can stave off dipping into your retirement accounts.
Yeah.
You might be able to push back delaying your Social Security benefit. And if you delay between your working retirement age and 70, it bumps it up 8% annually.
It should make a big difference.
It's huge. I mean, that can really up. Not a lot of investments are going to give that to you. And it also, you might even be able to continue to add to your retirement accounts. Those are the financial reasons. The health reasons are psychologically, it is just good to keep working. Studies have shown that cognitive decline after people retire is quite significant. And so if you can use it or lose it, basically. So sure. I love this idea of keeping engaged, you're networking, you're feeling relevant. Those are really great benefits for it. Now, let's stop for a second and say there are some roadblocks. Mm-hmm. Here's what's happening. People are saying, hey, I want to continue working in retirement. It's going to shore up my retirement accounts because I haven't saved enough. But in fact, many of them step out of the workplace and are unable to do that because of health reasons or because caregiving for an aging relative. These are two big issues. Now, remote work is doing a lot to help this, right? If you can find opportunities to work remotely, this has taken off after the pandemic, the opportunities are going to be there. The other roadblocks that we're finding are people are not actually preparing themselves for this. They say, I'm going to keep working, but they're not adding skills. They're not upskilling. They're not adding anything to value themselves. They're not staying abreast with their industries. They're not networking. And they say they're not even paying attention to their health, for gosh sake. So this is really important.
Kind of a paradox.
So that's a problem.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you then, how are employers responding to this? Are they incentivizing this in any way? Or because you would need some cooperation, I would think, at the employer level.
It's huge. And I appreciate you asking that because what's happening is some companies are catching on, but there's still a lot of companies that do not offer phased retirement. They don't have flexible schedules, part-time opportunities. And so this is, there's something that they need a little bit of a wake-up call, and this is why. Demographically, they are going to have to. By 2034, there are going to be more people over 65 in America than under 18. There is simply not enough younger workers moving up through the chain in order to supply the work chain. So they're going to need to find ways to retain and recruit older workers. This is simply a fact. So the headwinds are starting to subside.
Yeah, I'd say the demographic changes underfoot right now are just phenomenally huge. So thank you for joining us, Carrie Hannon, as always.
Social Security has been a buzzword for those looking to retire as concerns arise about the sustainability of the program. Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy has been pushing efforts around the system, and he spoke with Yahoo Finance's Kerry Hannon about his optimism surrounding reform before the next election. Take a listen.
I have no optimism whatsoever. And I'm a pretty optimistic person, so I say that with kind of, but let's put it in context. The reason I initially had optimism, the actuaries predict that the program will go, the social will go, the trust fund insolvent within 8 to 9 years. At that point, a beneficiary who's currently relying upon Social Security to pay her bills will see a 24% cut. With that, we put together a program that not only addresses the cut without raising taxes on seniors, without increasing the age of eligibility for seniors, put together a program which actually addressed the insolvency, but also addressed other issues as well. We had Republicans and Democrats, but we don't have a presidential candidate or a president who's willing to take it on.
Can you just sort of flesh out for us your idea? You have this, what you call your big idea, which is really interesting, to sort of create this investment fund to supplement the existing Social Security system. And can you just sort of explain what that's all about and how you sort of respond to any critics of this idea?
Gary, you put it so well. We would set up a fund, 1.5 trillion funding over 5 years. And we would allow that to be invested, no money from the Social Security Trust Fund, none of that, but it would be separate dollars. And we would hold that in an escrow account and just allow a return upon the return. Whatever dividends that would return would go back into the fund. And over 70 years, it would grow. And as it grows, the rule of 12, towards the end, it's doubling. And it ends up growing enough that it takes care of 75% of the unfunded accrued liability within the Social Security program.
So it's not privatizing it, right? Is it?
Well, no, but different from previous proposals.
Okay.
George W. Bush created individual accounts for beneficiaries. We don't do that. We continue to pay scheduled benefits per the current schedule. All the risk is borne by the fund. And so a year-to-year fluctuation, of course, is going to occur, but it does not imperil the benefits that someone is currently receiving. But we do know over that long of a time frame, if history is any guide, that you're going to see a certain increase, and that increase, again, by conservative projections, will offset up to 75% of the unfunded accrued liability.
You know, in a second idea, is there any way around this notion of increasing payroll taxes as part of a comprehensive Social Security deal? Would you support a plan that included that in any way?
If by increasing the payroll tax, you mean increasing the rate, no, we do not have that as part of our plan. With a very small caveat, but that is not what we're doing with ours. We're not increasing the rate. What President Biden has proposed is increasing, applying payroll taxes to everybody making over $400,000. Now, the only problem with that, he's proposed it for multiple other programs already, to a tune of about $4.5 trillion. And now he wants to add an additional amount on top of that $4.5 trillion he's already applied it to. Additionally, under President Biden's plan, he does not index that $400,000, which means over roughly 15 years or 20 years, everybody will be making over $400,000, or at least everybody's income will be taxed, even if it is currently less than $400,000. I think you follow what I'm saying.
I do, yeah.
So we're different from the president's plan in we don't increase the rate, and we don't apply it only to people who make over 400K.
Okay, thank you. Now, some other possible smaller efforts that people might be able to see sooner, and one is around giving people more information about when to first claim Social Security. And I know this is something you've co-sponsored. Can you elaborate on that a little bit and where we might see that headed?
Yeah, so there is you can right now take early retirement age age 62. If you know you're about to die of cancer and you've got 3 years in which the doctor tells you you're probably going to die, take your benefit age 62. But for most people, it's wiser to wait until age 70 because over the course of a normal lifespan, you'll receive more money if you wait until age 70. We are trying to help people understand that and putting out information that would educate the beneficiary. It is wiser to wait in a variety of ways, but it is wiser to wait. And that's what we're trying to help people understand.
And what are the chances that these efforts could wind their way through Congress, in the coming months? And what chances do they have?
I don't think that our big idea will become law until we have a new president. Both Biden and Trump have the same plan for Social Security, which is a plan to do nothing, which therefore is a plan that beneficiaries will get a 24% cut. But I think once the political season is over, I'm hoping that sanity returns and folks will say we cannot allow people to get a 24% cut. By the way, Carrie, if that occurs, poverty among the elderly will double. Now that's remarkable. Poverty among the elderly doubles if this occurs. We have to stop it. And I think that kind of demand will make people amenable to our proposal. It's not a free lunch, but it is something which I think will benefit all.
And two more quick questions. The next one, any hope for any real debate on Social Security in the 2024 campaign?
I don't think so. We had 14 senators. It was public. We had 14 senators, 7 and 7 Republican, Democrat. We have briefed the White House. The White House has said that yes, indeed, we briefed them. But when President Biden came out of the State of the Union speech, he did not speak about the bipartisan plan, which had bipartisan support in the House and the Senate. Instead, he focused on one Republican senator's plan, a plan that particular Republican senator had walked back from. It became very clear after that. He was running for re-election, and he was running for re-election on Social Security, attacking Republicans, and everything fell apart. Because, by the way, you need a president to sign a bill into law. I'm very disappointed that Biden did that. It destroyed an opportunity that was there, and it makes it more likely that one day somebody's going to get a 24% cut, or if we try and borrow our way out of it, that we borrow our country into indebtedness like you've never seen before.
And finally, just a newsy kind of thing. What's your reaction to President Biden's intent to nominate former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley to Commissioner of the Social Security Administration?
I've not had a chance to evaluate it, but if anyone's nominated who refuses to acknowledge that if we don't do anything, that there'll be a 24% cut, and simultaneously admits that adding more taxes on those who make over $400,000, when the president has already proposed $4.5 trillion of extra taxes on those folks, is not a real plan. That is something which is a fig leaf. And so I look forward to speaking to Mr. O'Malley. I'm hoping that it'll be more intellectually honest.
That was Louisiana Senator Bill Cassidy alongside Yahoo Finance's Carrie Hannon.
Well, as inflation continues to show signs of cooling, this may impact your Social Security. New estimates show that next year's Social Security cost of living adjustment will be over 2/3 less than the increase in 2023, according to the Senior Citizens League. So what does this mean for your retirement planning? Well, Scott Inman, Genwell Financial Advisors financial advisor and host of Get Ready for the Future show, joins us now. Thank you for joining us again this morning. So as we get ready for the future, what do you see as the biggest threats at the moment to people's retirement planning?
Well, when it comes to the Social Security component, I think the big thing is what's going to happen to Social Security in the long run. And that's a big question that we get in our client meeting rooms. Is it going to be there? And, the reality is it is going to be there. What it looks like is really the big question, right? So the Social Security Trust Fund is predicted to be depleted in the next decade. So what does that mean? Well, if that happens in the first part of the 2030s, then benefits would have to be cut. So your Social Security benefit across the board for current and future recipients would be cut by a projected 23%. Now, do we believe that's going to happen? No. But the reality is any fix has to come from lawmakers in Congress. And if lawmakers in Congress have to change Social Security, the ways they're going to choose to fix that are not going to be politically popular. For instance, just last month, there was a Republican proposal to raise the full retirement age to age 69. And it was met with a comment from one Democratic lawmaker that Republicans were trying to renege on a sacred promise made to Americans. Well, it's being used for political gain, right? But it doesn't solve the problem. You're either going to have to raise the retirement age, you're going to have to raise taxes, or a combination of both and other fixes in place. And while it won't get done anytime soon, it should before the midnight hour. And if it does, I don't think there's really any serious threat to Social Security. But to your point on the cost of living adjustments, year to year, it is always going to be figured on the tail end inflation data of the previous year. And obviously with inflation cooling, the cost of living adjustment is going to be lower. And so you can never really count on your Social Security benefit keeping up with inflation.
And to that point, I'm also looking at your notes here about Medicare, and you're saying that healthcare costs could be the biggest expense that you'll have in retirement. Talk about the changing dynamics there.
Yeah, that's the other thing, too, because when you talk about inflation and its connection to healthcare costs are rising at a much bigger clip than food and energy prices usually are. In fact, a Fidelity study out this year said that the average 65-year-old couple, through the remainder of their retirement, through the remainder of their lives, can expect to pay out of pocket $315,000 in healthcare expenses. Now, that's counting premiums and deductibles and coinsurance and all of that, and prescription drugs and long-term care. So people have this idea that once they reach Medicare age, that everything's covered. Clearly it's not. And the premiums you pay have to be accounted for too. And you have to be careful about that too, because the baseline premium for Medicare Part B, as you know, Medicare Part A is free, but you pay for Medicare Part B beginning at age 65. And that's $164.90 a month per person. That's pretty tolerable, but it is also changes based on the amount of income you're receiving. So if you're a retiree that has a pretty big pension and you're pulling pretty big money out of your 401ks or IRAs, your income could send you up to $428 in premium on a monthly basis for each member of that couple. So it gets to be pretty much a big cost potentially if you're receiving high income. So there's that. So you have to have a plan for healthcare costs in retirement. We recommend taking a look at HSAs in your pre-retirement years if you have access to one, because that allows you to have tax-free money to pay for healthcare costs in retirement. And then the other thing is you have to have a plan for long-term care. Medicare does not cover long-term care coverage in a nursing home or other places. So you have to have a plan for that. Do you have enough assets to self-insure? Have a bucket of money out there that is moderately invested that you can go to in your 70s or 80s whenever that long-term care need arises? Or do you have to leverage an insurance company and buy a long-term care insurance policy? You have to make that decision. And the best time to do that is before you reach age 65.
And so for people who are wondering how they should go about this, I mean, some people are increasingly now taking out home equity loans. So what's a smart way to do it so that you're not really being penalized here, but you can really try and figure out how to calculate what you're going to need in terms of what Social Security won't cover and what Medicaid won't cover?
Yeah, so for sure, Social Security is not even meant to cover all of your expenses or all of your lifestyle in retirement. The way we go about that, I would think of it like this, Rochelle. If you think of it as building a house, you put your foundation first down when you build a house. It's not exciting, but it's the most important part of that house. The most important part of your retirement is your required income. What are you going to need on a month-to-month basis just to pay the bills? What's the cash outflow? You may have a mortgage, you may not, but you're always going to have insurance, and you're always going to have taxes and utilities and food and gas and those things. Figure up that number and what you're going to have there. Does your Social Security checks, and if you have any other guaranteed income sources available to you, will that meet your guaranteed income or your required income need? If not, you're going to have to find some way to fill that gap because your expenses need to be met with guaranteed income. You may need to look to something like an annuity. with a portion of your assets to provide a rider that would allow you to fill that gap. Then the next step is your desired income. What do you want to do in retirement? What's your lifestyle look like on a month-to-month basis? Monetize that. How much extra money would you like to have in discretionary spending? That's the middle of the house, the framing of the house. And then the top of the house is your attic space, which is the stuff you put up there that you think you're going to pass on someday, right? That's your legacy. There's a component to that too. Are you charitable minded? Do you want to make sure your kids have some money after you're gone? You have to plan for that. But it all comes down to income. People walk into our office a lot of time, Rochelle, and they say, hey, do I have enough to retire? That's their first question. And maybe they have $1 million, maybe they have $700,000. We can't answer that question until we answer those income questions.
And that makes sense, because if you don't know what sort of life you want to live in retirement, then the numbers aren't really going to mean much of anything. Lots of important context there. I know people appreciate it. A big thank you there to Scott Inman, Genwealth Financial Advisors financial advisor and host of Get Ready for the Future show. Thank you so much.
Thank you.